After everything Harbor Point Communications has done for you, I sat across from her, clutching my purse tightly to keep my hands from shaking. The shock of being called into her office at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday had worn off, leaving a heavy knot in my stomach. "I consider this disloyal," Victoria said, her voice like ice as she stared at me from behind her imposing mahogany desk. "I can confirm that you interviewed with North Bay Solutions last Thursday and took a half-day leave for a dental appointment. My name is Addison Walker, I'm 31 years old, and I've worked in Harbor Point for 6 years." I was sick to my stomach. When I realized what was happening, Victoria. I know she cut me off with her perfectly manicured nails, tapping on a printed email. "Don't bother denying it. In the 6 years that I have worked in communications here in Spokane, Washington, I have tripled my clientele, generated millions of dollars in revenue, and gained the respect of every significant account on our roster. However, it seems that none of that has mattered. Security will now meet you at your desk, and you can retrieve your personal belongings, but your building access will be immediately revoked." 3 years in a row, I had come to this same office. With carefully prepared presentations that demonstrated my accomplishments, market rate salary comparisons, and requests for a well-earned raise. 3 years of difficult budget year excuses followed, and Victoria's voice was emotionless as she slid my company ID across her desk. "I've already disabled your email access." The injustice of it burned in my chest. I took a deep breath, straightened my blazer, and stood up after the quarterly meetings when record profits were announced. I realized Victoria seemed almost disappointed by my composed response. Perhaps she had anticipated tears or begging, but instead I reached across the desk and said, "I wish you and Harbor Point continued success." As the security guard hovered awkwardly by my desk while I packed my family photos and 6 years' worth of desk plants into a cardboard box, I felt surprisingly calm. Colleagues looked at me with concern, but I smiled reassuringly at them, despite the emotional turmoil inside. She hesitated, then briefly shook my hand, her face flickering with confusion. As I put the box in my car trunk, my phone buzzed with a message from David Kleen, CEO of North Bay Solutions. When I walked out of those glass doors for the last time, the April sunshine warm on my face, I realized something important. Victoria thought she was punishing me, but she couldn't have been more wrong. "Can we move our final?" As I drove home from Harbor Point with the cardboard box safely in my trunk, I thought back on everything that had led up to this point. Despite having a marketing degree, I joined the company right out of graduate school, eager and determined. I smiled at Victoria, who had no idea what was coming. "It's funny how 6 years of your life can fit into a single box." I began my career at Washington State University in an entry-level role making coffee runs and taking notes at meetings, but I worked non-stop, staying up late to volunteer for the challenging projects that no one wanted and establishing relationships with clients that others had dismissed as being too demanding. After 2 years, I was managing our mid-tier accounts, and by the 4th year, I had been given North Bay Solutions, our largest customer, accounting for almost 30% of Harbor Point's yearly revenue. David Kleen, North Bay's CEO, specifically asked me to be their account manager after I had stepped in during a crisis when their previous representative failed to deliver. "You're the only one who seems to understand what we need before we even ask," he told me, and ever since, our company's relationship with North Bay has flourished. Victoria was happy that they had extended their contract and doubled their marketing budget with us. She said, "This is the kind of initiative we value, but that value never translated into my pay." After that success, I asked for a raise, but Victoria explained with a practiced explanation that it wasn't in the budget this year. I apologized, but I accepted your contribution. At the time, the economy was unstable, and I was still developing my portfolio. However, the following year, after securing 3 new significant clients and winning an industry award for a campaign I had created, the same response was given: "Next year will be better." She assured me that we simply needed to tighten our belts a bit more. In the meantime, Victoria drove to work in a brand new luxury SUV, and the business rented an extra floor in our building for growth, but I persisted in my belief that hard work would eventually pay off. The third rejection occurred 6 months ago, immediately after I had negotiated a 40% increase in North Bay's annual contract value. Victoria said, "Your performance is exceptional, but we're investing in infrastructure this year. Perhaps we can revisit this in the summer." That night, something inside of me finally broke, and I updated my resume for the first time in 6 years, not out of retaliation or anger, but out of self-respect. I never imagined Victoria would find out about my job search before I was prepared to give notice at home, so I set the cardboard box. The truth of what had happened finally hit me as I stared at it on my kitchen counter. I wasn't just taking a day off or in between meetings, I was unemployed. The weight of it made it hard for me to breathe for a moment. My phone rang, and my best friend Olivia's name appeared. I just heard her say, "Are you okay?" when I answered. The news of Olivia's boyfriend and Thomas, Harbor's IT specialist, spread quickly. I was processing it when I responded honestly, sinking onto a kitchen stool. "It happened so fast that it's totally unfair," Olivia said, her voice rising with indignation. "Everyone knows you're the only reason North Bay has stayed with Harbor Point this long. Victoria is just intimidated because you're better at the job than she ever was." "The worst part is how she did it," I said, feeling a surge of rage as if I had committed corporate treason. Was there any truth to the rumor that Victoria had been the company's top account executive before going into management? Many of us suspected she missed the recognition and client relationships, frequently interjecting herself needlessly into my meetings with North Bay. Olivia firmly responded, "It's her loss," by seeking opportunities after being passed over for promotion for 3 years in a row. "And honestly, Addison, maybe it's for the best. You've been undervalued there for years." She was correct, of course. I had stayed at Harbor Point out of loyalty to my clients and colleagues, not because it was the best choice for my career. But getting fired like this took a deep breath and replied, "Addison, I just heard what happened at Harbor Point," David said, eschewing polite conversation. "Are you available to come in today?" "I'd like to." My phone beeped with an incoming call from David. Clean Olivia, saying, "I need to take this, it's North Bay." "Go take it, call me after." She said this before hanging up. "Yes, I can be there at 2 p.m. as you suggested," I said, my heart pounding, to speed up our conversation. "Great. And, Addison, don't worry about what happened this morning, sometimes these things work out for the best." The woman staring back at me in the kitchen window after I hung up was not defeated, rather, she was being released. I showered and changed into my best suit, which I saved for approaching potential clients, and as I put on my makeup, I felt a strange calmness descend upon me. Victoria believed she had punished me by firing me so suddenly, but maybe she had done me a favor that morning. Additionally, I had been explaining that I had given Harbor Point my allegiance, creativity, and numerous unpaid overtime hours in exchange for being devalued and thrown out. No matter what happened next, I knew that I would never again give my best effort to people who didn't see my value. It was time to take control. The North Bay Solutions headquarters took up the top 3 floors of AAS. I took the elevator to the 30th floor of the shiny glass building in downtown Spokane. I practiced in my mind what I would say in my interview to explain my sudden availability without coming across as resentful of Harbor Point. This was in contrast to Harbor Point's outdated office with its beige walls and aging furniture. North Bay embraced modern design, open spaces, collaborative pods, and walls of windows showcasing mountain views. Even when talking about awkward situations, professionalism was crucial. When the elevator doors opened, I saw David Clean waiting in the reception area. He gave me a warm greeting and held out his hand, saying, "Thank you for coming on such short notice." David was in his early 50s, had salt and pepper hair, and was known for being both brilliant and fair. Come to appreciate the flexibility over the course of our 3 years of working together. I responded, shaking his hand firmly. "It's been an unexpected day. Let's talk in my office." He led me through the busy workspace, past David's corner office, which was modest in comparison to Victoria's showpiece, but several North Bay employees I knew from our account work waved or nodded as we passed. Infinitely more welcoming, with cozy seating set up for conversation rather than intimidation. He offered coffee, so please, and once we were settled with steaming mugs, David got right to the point. This morning, I received a call from Victoria Sanders, who told me that she would be personally managing our North Bay account going forward. Business until a replacement was assigned. I nodded, maintaining a neutral expression despite the brief outburst of rage. Of course, Victoria would try to keep their biggest client herself, but she is unaware of David's further statement that we were already worried about our relationship with Harbor Point, which alarmed me because the most recent campaign results exceeded expectations by we've seen changes at Harbor Point over the past year, including delayed responses, quality issues with everyone but you, and, to be honest, a sense that they're taking our business for granted. He put down his coffee mug and leaned forward 3 months ago when our board suggested we look into other marketing partners, but I resisted because of our relationship. 23% of the results were excellent, and he agreed because of your work. David continued, it felt like perfect timing, but I need to be clear about something, we were never planning to poach you. You have continuously shown an understanding of our brand and business needs that goes beyond the typical client-agency relationship. I wondered if he was saying what I thought he was saying when you reached out about potential opportunities. Respect professional boundaries too much. For that reason, we were willing to wait until you provided adequate notice at Harbor Point. I had intended to give 2 weeks' notice, but I felt it was crucial that he know that once I had a firm offer. David grinned, and I think that part of the reason we're having this conversation is because of your professionalism. Victoria's decision this morning only expedited our timeline. This isn't an interview, Addison, it's a job offer as Director of Client Strategy. He opened a folder on his desk and slid a document across to me. I looked down at the paper, and I was shocked to see that the salary was almost double. You would be building and managing a team to manage all of our external marketing partnerships and agency relationships. David corrected the offer letter. That sat on my kitchen table that evening, signed and ready to be returned tomorrow. At Harbor Point, I've been earning more than I would have even asked for in my most recent denied raise request. This is very generous. I managed its market rate for someone with your experience and proven results. Sometimes it takes leaving a situation to realize what you're truly worth. The evening to go over everything, even though we both knew that I would say yes. I took the time to think through important decisions, even though it seemed obvious. My phone had been ringing all afternoon with texts from old coworkers at Harbor Point, and word of my termination had spread swiftly. Rumors about my meeting at North Bay had also surfaced, and I had replied to a few close coworkers but refrained from getting sucked into office gossip. After you left, Victoria called an emergency meeting and informed everyone that you were fired for violating company loyalty. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, so I shook my head. Victoria was attempting to make fun of me, but from Thomas's perspective. Message that suggested her strategy might be backfiring. Another text message came in from Jessica, our receptionist. She had been locked in her office making calls all afternoon and appeared stressed. I assumed that someone was concerned about North Bay, but I chose not to reply. Victoria's distress gave me a renewed sense of confidence that I had made the right choice in searching for a company culture that valued loyalty, offered nothing in return, and wasn't something I wanted to be involved in any longer. My phone rang, and I answered it out of curiosity. Addison Walker said, "This is Elaine Winters. I'm on the board at Harbor Point Communications." I felt uneasy because board members don't often get involved in employee matters, and I know there was an incident today involving your employment. I appreciate the call, Miss Winters, but I've already accepted another position. I said, maintaining a polite but firm tone, I'd like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss it. She went on to say that Victoria may have made a snap decision, firing her most valuable account manager without board approval, leaving North Bay potentially walking damage control. The board appreciates your contribution to Harbor Point. The irony was nearly agonizing for 3 years of documented rejected requests for appropriate compensation, and now all of a sudden the board values my contribution. I would like to know where. I don't think that would be appropriate to share at this time. If it's about compensation, I'm sure we can revisit those conversations. Although I had no intention of going back to Harbor Point, I gave it some thought and decided that we should talk about it in person tomorrow morning. Although I had no intention of going back to Harbor Point, there was something to be said for professional closure, so I can meet at 9 a.m. I concurred. The spring evening was cool but pleasant, with the city lights starting to twinkle as dusk settled. I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto my apartment balcony after Elaine said, "I'm not coming to negotiate a return because I've signed an employment contract elsewhere." Her tone suggested that she didn't believe me. "I'll see you tomorrow at our offices." Bring a conversation I hadn't expected to have, but maybe it was a chance to explain what had gone wrong at Harbor Point, not only for my own closure but also as feedback that might help those who stayed. David Clean's email notification buzzed on my phone, with the subject line, "Welcome to the team." No matter what happened tomorrow, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't looking back at it. Jessica's eyes widened when she saw me, and her professional smile faltered. "Addison, you're here for the meeting with Ms. Winters." "That's right," I confirmed, signing the visitor log, another surreal moment. "I'll let her know you've arrived," Jessica said, lowering her voice. The elevator ride to the conference room gave me a moment to gather myself. I had dressed professionally in a navy suit, not to impress but to remind myself and everyone else that I was approaching this meeting as an equal, not as a fired employee looking for redemption. For what it's worth, everyone is talking about how wrong this was, and you were the best of us. Her words warmed me. "Thank you, Jessica." "Miss Walker, thank you for coming," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Please have a seat." I expected Victoria to join us, but as Elaine closed the door, I saw that she was already waiting with a slim folder in front of her. She was in her 60s, her silver hair cut in a precise bob, and she exuded the poised confidence of someone used to making million-dollar decisions before breakfast. It became evident at the door that this would be a private conversation. "I've reviewed your personnel file," and Elaine started to open the folder. She saw 3 formal requests for salary adjustments that were all denied, 6 years of excellent performance reviews, and steady growth in your account portfolio. I was surprised to see this pattern because I thought compensation decisions were reviewed at Victoria has been operating with significant autonomy, but I don't see her continuing to provide documentation justifying your termination yesterday. There is no company policy that forbids interviews. The board-level major compensation changes are true, but management has discretion within certain parameters. Ella's expression remained neutral, but her tone suggested disapproval. "The board would like to offer you reinstatement with the adjusted compensation you requested in your last review plus a 10% increase and the title." With other organizations, I kept my response measured. The word disloyal was used, and Elaine's eyebrow arched slightly. Given the circumstances, this was an interesting choice. Elaine said, "I've already accepted a position elsewhere at North Bay Solutions without asking, and I didn't confirm or deny maintaining professional boundaries." The offer was better than anything Victoria had been willing to consider, but it came 3 years and one humiliating dismissal too late. For a brief moment, Elaine observed me and said, "Victoria is worried that North Bay may re-evaluate their relationship with Harbor Point given your departure." The true reason for this meeting was not my treatment, but rather North Bay's fear of losing a significant client. I carefully responded, and Elaine nodded as if appreciating my discretion. "If I may ask you one final question, what could Harbor Point have done differently to keep you?" It was a surprising but welcome question, so I thought carefully about how I would respond and realized my worth before having to search elsewhere. I said, "Loyalty works both ways, Miss Winters." Harbor Point expected unwavering commitment while repeatedly proving I wasn't worth investing in which an unsustainable imbalance is produced. After offering a meaningful nod, Elaine said, this meeting wasn't about giving me another chance. It was about thanking you for your courage, whatever your next steps are, and I wish you success." As she left Harbor Point for the second and last time, I felt lighter than I had in years. Had been about providing me with an opportunity to take back my story and depart on my own terms while maintaining my honor and professional reputation. When Monday morning finally arrived, I was both excited and anxious because my new job at North Bay Solutions officially started today, marking the beginning of a new chapter in my. Despite my senior role, David made sure everything was ready, including a welcome basket and technology setup. At 9 a.m. I arrived early, eager to get settled in my new office, a real office with a door and windows, not the small cubicle I'd occupied at Harbor Point. He stopped by to introduce me to my new team, 5 talented marketing specialists. Who would the irony that I had gone from managing a single account to supervising all marketing partnerships, including whoever would now manage the Harbor Point relationship team, wasn't lost on me. "This is Addison Walker, our new Director of Client Strategy, who David announced many of you are already familiar with." After introducing himself and holding a quick team meeting to discuss priorities, David asked me to join him in the conference room. There, I discovered that a number of North Bay's executive team members were seated around a table. "Before you dive in completely," David explained, "we wanted your input on an important choice. We're reevaluating our relationship with Harbor Communications in light of recent changes. Their contract is up for renewal next month," the company's chief financial officer stated. The chief marketing officer remarked, "We appreciate your viewpoint, as you are aware of Harbor Point's needs and capabilities. I could have suggested ending the relationship with Victoria in order to get quick, satisfying retribution. The chance to deal Harbor Point a serious financial blow was right in front of me, and no one would question it. Business relationships ended all the time, but that wasn't who I was. While retaliation might feel good in the short term, professionalism would benefit me more in the long run, so I believe we should evaluate Harbor Point according to the same standards as any other possible partner." I mentioned that although their work has been excellent, consistency and account management will be important considerations going forward. The email was sent at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, exactly 1 week after Victoria had fired me from Harbor Point. I hadn't planned the timing. Basically, after carefully weighing our marketing needs going forward, North Bay's executive team made a decision after considering proposals from 3 rival agencies. David graciously allowed me to view the email before it was sent, but I had withdrawn from the decision to avoid any appearance of bias or inappropriateness. The message was straightforward and professional. Decided to transfer our account to Meridian Creative with immediate effect. This decision reflects our changing digital needs and brand strategy. Walker, our new Director of Client Strategy, will supervise the transfer and act as your point of contact. We value our collaboration and ask that all materials be transferred by Friday at the latest. I can only imagine Victoria's response to this. Receiving the news, the shock, and the realization that she had lost not only me but also North Bay, a client who accounted for almost 30% of Harbor Point's yearly revenue. I would be in charge of overseeing the transition, and the ideal professional. Retaliation had fallen into my lap without my having to plan it or disparage Harbor Point. The company's own shortcomings, brought to light by my departure, had done that for me that afternoon. Jessica, Harbor Point's receptionist, sent me a LinkedIn request and a private message. The office is in disarray, with Victoria spending the entire day in emergency meetings, and 3 other account managers have updated their resumes. Karma works quickly, so I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to brag or meddle in Harbor Point's internal affairs. Instead, I concentrated on creating my new team and our procedures because success was ultimately the best form of retaliation. Nevertheless, I accepted Jessica's connection request with a brief note that said, "Thank you for your kindness during my time at Harbor Point, and I wish you all the best." Taking the high road felt surprisingly good in my new role at If I had stayed at Harbor Point waiting for recognition that might never come, I would never have encountered the opportunities and challenges that North Bay offered. Sometimes the best retaliation isn't something you actively seek, rather, it's the inevitable result of valuing yourself when others don't. Looking back on that journey, after a year, I discovered that Victoria had unintentionally handed me a priceless present, the motivation I required to discover my actual value. In my quest for vengeance, I discovered something of far greater value placed on self-respect and the bravery to assert my rightful claim to achievement.